Okay, world history. Welcome to your chapter 25 and 27 test guide study review. Try to help you guys out. 15 questions on this test, worth 4 points apiece, 60 points. So let's start off. We'll start off with the with industrialization. Remember that this is an event that began in Britain, early to mid 1700s. And one of the things that helped kick off industrialization was a process called enclosure. Um, and that this helped farming efficiency. They were producing, it took less farmers to produce more food. And that meant that there were extra bodies laying around. And so those extra bodies are going to get pushed to the cities and they're going to become a workforce in the cities working in these factories and stuff. So enclosures was a big part of the industrial process, industrialization. So remember that farming efficiency there. Um, and there's a lot of actions that happen because of the agricultural revolution in Britain with this enclosures and stuff. Um, population increases because we're making more food. Food prices go down because it's easier for us to produce food. The average size of farms actually increases, so we have fewer farmers, but the farms are larger. Remember, the rest of that population is going and working in the city. One of the things that doesn't happen is the number of farmers certainly doesn't increase. That's not something that happens. We got less farmers producing more food, which grows a bigger population. First area, like I said, to undergo industrialization is Britain and its textiles industry. That is, clothing and making of clothing and garments and stuff is where you're first going to see industrialization take off. It's going to become a big deal. Entrepreneurs, if you remember this from your crossword, of course, these are basically business people. They're people that are investing in factories, and it's entrepreneurs that really help the industrial revolution take off. They play a large part in it. Now, you wrote a paper on the Industrial Revolution and the pros and cons of it. We know that there were many pros and many cons, and some of the good effects were short term, or some of the bad effects were short term, but some of the long term effects were good. Early results of the Industrial Revolution, you get a better quality clothing. You're not making it from scratch, so people aren't going to have two sets of clothing, their Sunday best and the clothes that they wear the rest of the week. You're actually going to be able to buy sets of clothes. Average person's diet goes up. I mean, we got more food production and things like that. Transportation improves because of the Industrial Revolution. But of course, that's to be balanced with terrible working conditions, long hours, poor pay, child labor, terrible working conditions. So keep that in mind. Some of you that wrote about the cons of the Industrial Revolution certainly know that part well. Now eventually long term, you get some very positive changes in the results of the Industrial Revolution. Living conditions become better. In the beginning, they were kind of poor, but eventually you're going to get more middle class, people living in the suburbs, things like that. More educational opportunities because the economy is buzzing and stuff. It's doing better. Consumer goods become much more affordable. Even the working class people producing the goods can now afford to buy them, which is nice. But of course, you still got some environmental issues. There's still a lot of pollution and stuff that these factories are getting away with. So that's something that doesn't improve. Now, switching gears a little bit here to imperialism and the scramble for Africa. We're going to be asking you things like the difference between European colonies and protectorates in Africa. That's basically, it has to do with their style of government. More active role for colonies than protectorates. Protectorates are going to be able to run their own stuff more. So government's the biggest difference there. Paternalism, remember that from the crossword. Basically, the idea that these Africans couldn't take care of themselves, that they needed someone to watch over them, to care for them. I'm not exactly sure what Europeans thought that the Africans have been doing for the last 10,000 years without them, but for some reason they believed that this was a justification for them coming in and taking African lands and trying to force Africans to be more white and things like that. as this idea of paternalism. They're just looking out for him, like a father looks out for his son. Sometimes you got to have a little tough love. Assimilation in Africa. France, it really pushes assimilation. They're thinking in their heads that they can get Africans to become like them, but Africans had always resisted outside influence. Even when the Muslims came into Africa and had converted many of them to Islam, the Africans still did it their way. And so France will they'll try this. They'll try to make the Africans like them, but it's not going to work. And so they abandon that idea for the most part. Now, you remember this too from our simulation where we were taking over Africa as many different countries. There's really only a couple of countries that are able to resist African rule. One of those, of course, is Ethiopia under the rule of Menelik II. He's one of the few and the lucky that is able to maintain his independence from European colonies or from European colonists. And really what the Europeans come in and do is makes no sense, really. I guess it made sense on their side, but it causes a lot of problems. They're going to impose these barriers. They're going to say, this is mine, this is France's, that's Spain's. And they would cut rival clans in half. They would push rival clans together. Just a big mess. They would have these unnaturally imposed boundaries that, Africa's still dealing with that stuff today. So major problem with colonization on that end. India, the crown jewel of the British Empire, cotton, jewels, spices, and stuff like that. It's a very valuable colony to the British. They had some issues. They had the Sepoy Mutiny, of course, and Sepoys were Indian soldiers. They had the Sepoy Mutiny where they refused to fight for the British because they're making them bite off the caps of these bullets, and they won't tell them what it's greased in. Is it bacon or pork, should I say, pork or beef? And these Indians are either Hindu or Muslims, and so it's against their religion to put those meats in their mouth, and so they refuse to do it, and it becomes a big ordeal, of course. Now there are a lot of other causes of the Sepoy Mutiny. Like I said, religious beliefs is certainly one of them. The people already resent British rule. They're already unhappy with them. And the people are starving. There's famine going on in India. So they have a lot of issues. It's not nationalism or anything like that where it's about becoming their own nation. That's not what's behind the Sepoy Mutiny. It's these other factors working together. And I think the religious one, the biting of the bullets is the kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back. And after that, they've fed up. They've had enough. Now, we talked a little bit about Ram Mohan Roy. He's this guy that he's got his own idea for India and moving towards independence. He thinks that they have to change some of their cultural, beliefs, some of their cultural and religious ideas, and that if they can do that, then they can win independence. But if they hold on too firmly to traditional ideas, they're never going to get it, in his belief. And of course, the very important Berlin Conference, 1884, 1885. That's, it's held in Germany. Essentially, it's to try to keep war from breaking out because there's so much intense competition going on for Africa. So they're going to divide Africa into these really weird areas, these unnatural barriers, and they're the Africans aren't invited. They don't have any say in it. They are purely victims in this. If you can take good notes off of this audio and prepare, you should be fine on this test. If not, I feel like it's going to be pretty hard for you guys. So hopefully you're prepared, and good luck.